It's July 27, 1940, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
Plenty of cartoon characters start out looking and acting nothing like their final selves. The Simpsons were sketchier and meaner, Mickey Mouse was a straight-up troublemaker, but when Bugs Bunny made his debut today in history in 1940, he arrived pretty fully formed, a wisecracking, smooth-talking trickster, right down to his famous catchphrase, "Meh, what's up, Doc?"
Oh, immaculate.
That was good. That was really good.
I mean, I'm relieved that you went in and did it because I was on tenterhooks hoping someone was going to pull it off. And you just did.
Who's going to do it?
You had to step up if not.
One of the reasons that Bugs Bunny was looking and acting quite a lot like the Bugs Bunny we'd recognise in A Wild Hare is that some proto-Bugses had also popped up before his official debut. He started out as an unnamed character in a 1938 Porky Pig short called Porky's Hare Hunt. This was a time when it was easy to be novel. The previous year they'd done Porky's Duck Hunt, and that went down well. So they were like, great, different animal, same story. Bugs was a titular hare, although he wasn't named, and as we all know from Elmer Fudd's catchphrase, he is actually a wabbit. He was drawn that time by the Warner Brothers storyboard artist Ben Hardaway, whose nickname was Bugs. And so later on, the designers decided to change Bugs's look. This was the time when animation was moving from a more sort of realistic animal style into cutesy characters that we know today. And so the animator in charge of redesigning the still unnamed bunny was Charlie Thorson. And when he did so, he referred to the character as Bugs's Bunny, a little nod to Hardaway, who was also the director of that short as well. So it was a nice little tribute to him. And then when they came to release a press pack for that cartoon, which was called Harum Scarum, they simply used that in-house nickname as the character's name, minus the possessive apostrophe. It then appeared in a trade newspaper review of the cartoon before it was ever shown or said on screen.
Yeah, and even within Warner Brothers, you know, some people called it Bugs's Bunny informally. Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny, and like every other Looney Tunes character ever, it's amazing, referred to the character as Happy Rabbit. That's what he knew him as in that year, in 1939. And when you watch Harum Scarum, because he isn't the fully formed Bugs yet, he is too cute. And weirdly, he has Woody Woodpecker's laugh, which is particularly odd, because you're like, I know where they're going to use that again later. Then you get Elmer's Candid Camera in 1940, which is an Elmer Fudd picture, directed by Chuck Jones. Almost there in that, but Bugs kind of looks like Bugs, but Elmer is weird and stretchy like a caricature. It took this day in 1940 with A Wild Hare, the same year, by the way, that Pinocchio and Fantasia and Woody Woodpecker and Tom and Jerry all made their debuts. So big year for animation. For director Tex Avery to do a redesign which made Bugs slim and sleeker and less cute and more like wise and more sassy. And that's where What's Up Doc comes from. So Tex Avery, his real name wasn't Tex. He's from Texas. That was his nickname. He had heard that growing up, What's Up Doc, like people say Buster or Buddy. It wasn't a big deal for him to give Bugs that phrase. But almost the moment that it hit moviegoers, it became this sort of meme. Everyone loved What's Up, Doc.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole cartoon becomes a blueprint for Warner Brothers cartoons for decades. You know, in A Wild Hare, Bugs is there matching wits with the bumbling Elmer Fudd, who's trying and obviously failing to shoot him. But unlike earlier cartoons, Bugs just isn't this agent of chaos. He's this cool, confident trickster guy, and he goads Elmer, he flirts with him, he lets Elmer think that he's won only to kind of yank the rug away, and this dynamic becomes what really is the Looney Tunes staple for decades, the idea of Bugs outsmarting a dim but determined antagonist, and then other cool customers outsmarting their better armed hunter. And you know, the cartoon actually ends with Elmer sobbing, heartbroken, defeated, with Bugs walking away, still nibbling on his carrot, which is kind of the perfect punchline to the film. And The Wild Hare just was this critical success as well as being really popular with audiences. It earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Animated Short. It lost ultimately to MGM's The Milky Way, but more importantly, it established both a formula and also a star.
Yeah, Bugs was such a breakout hit that the cartoon was re-edited to add in a featuring Bugs Bunny title card into the credits, which would then become, the standard going forward. Even
No
though his
apostrophe.
Yeah, exactly.
Just Bugs Bunny.
Got to
Yeah.
get that sorted out before we put the title card in. And his next couple of appearances, weirdly, still looked and sounded a bit weird. I think probably because they were in production before the success of A Wild Hare sort of locked in the definitive Bugs Bunny. But from 1941's Hiawatha's Rabbit Hunt, which got another Oscar nom, again, did they make anything that wasn't just about hunting? He was the Bugs that we know and love from then on. And particularly because of the timing, World War II audiences absolutely loved him. He was this insouciant smartass who always came out on top, especially when he was outwitting the Axis powers, as he did in several wartime shorts. He was matched up with Hitler, Goering, the Imperial Army of Japan in a cartoon whose name I can't even say and wouldn't recommend watching if you don't like racial slurs and incredibly offensive caricatures. But he was Looney Tunes' most loved and recognised character precisely because he was featuring in all these sort of war-themed shorts. And he was very popular among the serving soldiers as well. He was painted onto a lot of aircraft fuselages because he had this cool and flappable demeanour, which, as you can imagine, is quite a confidence boost if you've been drafted into the military.
Absolutely. All he's got is American pluck, right? But he literally in this short looks down the barrel of a shotgun. And he's like, well, you're not going to shoot me. Like, he's calm in the face of absolute danger. So you can see how that resonated. I just want to talk a little bit about Leon Schlesinger Productions, who made this stuff. It's interesting. We think of the brand names Warner Brothers, Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes, but all of those were sort of umbrella brands for what was being produced by this really scrappy outfit compared to Disney and MGM, Leon Schlesinger Productions, which was in such a sort of shitty old building that it was referred to as Termite Terrace fondly by the animators who worked there. And was completely unloved by Warner Brothers. It's fascinating because, as we've been saying, they got nominated for Oscars, but animation wasn't really taken that seriously by Warner Brothers. Like I say, this is the era of Fantasia, but before then, the Warner Brothers themselves were completely distracted by the features that they were making, paid no attention to the cartoonists that ostensibly worked for them because they worked for this other sort of little indie that they never had anything to do with. Jack Warner literally didn't even know where the cartoon unit was. And Harry Warner once said, when asked about his cartoons, the only thing I know is we make Mickey Mouse. Which is astonishing, isn't it, when you think back? I mean, not that those Warner Brothers features aren't great as well, but, at this vantage point nearly 100 years later, it's the cartoons you remember, isn't it? It's the cartoons that are still on.
And meanwhile, Leon Schlesinger was such a fascinating character too. He was a cigar-chomping, fast-talking producer. He wasn't an animator himself, but he had really shrewd instincts to surround himself with kind of eccentric geniuses like Tex Avery and Chuck Jones and Prince Frelling, among others. And his approach was famously hands-off. He just let them do their thing. And his own background in showbiz and personal savvy kind of comes into that. He came up through the vaudeville circuit and the scrappy world of independent film production. And success often meant outsmarting a more powerful competitor. And maybe that's where the theme of all of these cartoons comes from as well. His own personal interest in the underdog coming good. But even so, it's kind of his willingness to hire all of these absolutely kind of anti-authoritarian characters around him that led to the Warner Brothers cartoon as we know it, even if the Warner Brothers themselves didn't.
Yeah, I mean, he also employed the striking Disney artists as well. Disney was not keen on unions. So Schlesinger just took them all and gave them everything that they said they wanted because he knew that he could get some great animators that way. And you can see that. It's a bit like when we were talking about Shrek and what Katzenberg wanted to do when he left Disney. You can sort of feel that chip on his shoulder, I think, in Looney Tunes. It's like, oh, you're not the only one that can make cartoons, mate, but we're going to make ours are really rambunctious and rude.
Yeah, and that's really the kind of energy that is then reflected in the character of Bugs Bunny, who's there's lots of stories about exactly, because no one can really claim to have created Bugs because he underwent so many redesigns. Although it didn't stop there was a guy called Bob Clampett, who was a director of the short where they kind of hit on the definitive modern design.
Wasn't called Bob's Bunny, was it?
Well, he went around telling everyone that he was the creator of Bugs. Lots of fellow animators weren't super keen on him after that. But the character did arise from several of these sort of scrappy, unflappable archetypes that were around at the time. Lots of people have suggested he's based on this, like a side character in It Happened One Night, the rom-com with Clark Gable, who chomps on a carrot. But I'm like, well, I don't know if that's enough in and of itself. The voice, Mel Blanc's voice, once he finally settled on the Bugs voice, was inspired by Frank McHugh, who was a character actor. He was a sort of a James Cagney sidekick in several films, and he had that kind of, again, laid-back Brooklyn wise-ass persona that then fed through into Bugs. And then Blanc continued to do the voice for decades. They're actually an interesting story about how he did the carrot chomping. They tried a bunch of different special effects. They tried celery because it was easier to chew. Nothing sounded like a carrot being chomped except a carrot being chomped. So for speed and presumably his own comfort, Blanc would chew them up and then spit the chunks into a spittoon so he could carry on reading the dialogue. Yeah. There was another story as well, actually, about in 1961, he was in this really serious car wreck and ended up in a coma. And as he told it later on in his memoir and on lots of talk shows, he loved a talk show yarn, he was unresponsive for 2 weeks. And then finally, a doctor came up with the idea to ask him, Bugs Bunny, how are you doing today? To which Blanc replied, being drawn out of his coma, what's up, doc?
Just as well I didn't ask him, how are you, Porky Pig? And he said, that's all, folks.
Now,
This episode first aired last year exclusively to members of Club Retrospectors.
Join today and unlock a new episode this Sunday.
Patreon.com/retrospectors